Let's call the meeting to order and call the roll, please.
Mario Ryan.
Here.
Stacy Gloss.
Here.
Morgan Johnston. Elizabeth Meshewitsky.
Here.
Sorry. Todd Ruff.
Here.
Andrew Stump. Stephen Wald.
Okay. All right, well, we have a quorum, so we'll get going. And are there any changes to the agenda that anyone would like to make? I'm going to propose, because I know we do have some guests here to talk with us about our continuing business topic, which is 6th on the agenda. If there are no objections, what I would like to do is maybe move that to like immediately after public input. Just, in that way, if you want to stay for the rest of the meeting, you're perfectly welcome to, but if you want to get going, you can also do that. And so if there are no objections, we'll take that right after.
Sounds good.
All right. We have 2 sets of minutes. So let's start with our July minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the July meeting?
I wasn't here.
Did I say so moved? I don't know.
Is there a second?
I wasn't
Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll second it. It's a little unusual, I guess. But I think it's still within Robert's rules here. All those, is there any discussion or any changes for the minutes?
There might have been a typo.
Okay. Do you know?
It's the part where you read the letter.
Okay.
And instead of it saying red, it says real.
I'm sorry, instead of saying what?
It says real instead of red.
Okay. Did you catch?
I'm writing that down.
Oh, okay, great. All right. Well, since the mover is making the correction, and as the seconder, I'll back that. Are there any other corrections or changes? All right. Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? All right. How about our August minutes?
Move to approve.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Are there any, is there any discussion, any changes or corrections? All right. All those in favor of approving the August minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, good. All right, and I'm going to ask for public input. If you are here to address us on the youth engagement topic, you don't need to come forward at this point because you have your own agenda item. But if there are any other members of the public present who want to address us on any other issues today. Anybody here for that? Okay. Great, then we will move to our youth engagement item on the agenda. And this is carryover from a suggestion that Cook Constant had made that, we might consider designating a student seat, or requesting that council designate a student seat on the commission. And we talked about it a couple meetings ago. And kind of where we haven't taken any formal action on it, but where we're leaning right now is that having a designated seat would kind of, it would engage that person, but there might be other ways that would be to engage youth in what the commission is doing that would perhaps engage more people on a more of an ongoing basis. So we just wanted to consult a little bit with just with some of the people who had kind of brought the idea to our attention. So are there any other comments that the commission members want to make before we open the floor to our guests? All right. Any staff comments? Okay. All right. I don't know if there is somebody who, among our guests, who would like to get the ball rolling, but can step forward.
Well,
I
think I'll get the ball rolling.
Okay.
Because I've invited people who really have never been to a commission meeting or anything before. But this came about because I was involved with a group, and Saba was one of the actors who I think presented Pester Power. You came to the commission, which I thought was a terrific effort to get younger people in charge of inspiring the
This is
older
Alex, right?
generation to
Hey,
To
Steve, let me buzz you in.
be involved on sustainability issues, because it's really their concern more than ours, because they're inheriting the environment that we're leaving. And when I was on the Human Relations Commission, we had a designated student seat that was there. When I found out there was one, I immediately went to the high school and recruited a student and found it a very valuable experience. And you're quite right, one person on the commission, one student, would only bring one student's point of view. But to me, that is an enormous step, because for one thing, it introduces a student to how city government works, gives a student gives them a voice at the table to speak about things that are going on at school, in the community, and to report back to the school. So to me, I don't think that's a problem with, not inviting other members or,
Just
I'm sorry.
Sorry, yeah.
It's a little hard to concentrate.
Yeah.
buzz you in.
Because I didn't have any prepared
No.
remarks. It's just, I think it's a valuable thing to do, and two of the students that I did invite to come are here with no idea how the commission works or what the commission's business is. But you might want to say a little something about you might have questions about it. I don't know if there would be ongoing projects that would be reaching out. There's something on the agenda about a middle school project, which I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, it's another group that has, if I'm thinking of the right folks, that has presented to us before, that they have a project each year. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, well, another student just showed up, so we've got a very
Full
healthy
house, yeah.
representation.
Do we have, there's another chair over here, if you want to, or over there?
I wanted to suggest that students be involved with the commission, so now I think if any of you has anything, would you introduce yourselves?
I guess I'll go first. I'm Aiden Rivera Rogers. I'm from the Urbana High School and just here to see how things work because honestly I have no clue. So I'm just to observe and take notes.
Welcome.
Because there's a student group at the high school that's
Oh, yeah.
going to start.
Sorry, that's a little annoying. We just recently started a environmental club based around Dr. White's agriculture classes, which are again is environmental sciences and such. Just trying to get the school a more eco-friendly place. So because we have literally nothing that's addressing that at our school. So we figured this is the best way to kind of get the student body involved and fill that gap.
How long has that group been going?
It's just started today.
Just started.
So we're trying to get it rolling, but right now we don't really know what we're doing.
That's wonderful.
I'm Sage Johnson. I've been involved with Pester Power, and I've been to this, seen the commission before. I'm excited to see what we're going to do today, and I haven't been to the club, so I'd like to get involved with that.
Are you at Urbana
So I'm
High
the
School?
other- Yes, I am.
Okay.
I'm Salva Monetti Tesfaye. I was also part of Pester Power for a long time. And yeah, I go to CMS, which is right next to Lincoln Square, in the church. And yeah, I'm interested in seeing how things go here.
I'm Saba's mom. And I saw the performances of Pester Power. And I found one of the most gripping statements in Pester Power, the statement that, what, it's gonna happen in my lifetime? My lifetime? And pointing to the adults, because you all aren't gonna be here, but I'm gonna be here to deal with the consequences of your inaction or action in the wrong direction. And so it hit me hard as watching it. I felt very responsible for what we're leaving to the new generation that's going to have to live with it. And Saba has performed pretty strongly in the Pastor Power performance, and if she could be a voice in this commission, I think and other young people could be a voice, because they're the most directly hit by all of this. I'd be very happy.
Are there others who wanna? I mean, this is not your last chance to make a comment, but just, it's something you wanted to. Well, I know, we had a few people comment about, not necessarily knowing a lot about how the commission works. We were formed in the year 2008. That the city council and mayor appointed a commission of, people who are, either have, kind of, maybe an area of expertise that's related to environmental sustainability, or perhaps have been politically active with it on a volunteer basis, or, but they have some kind of a interest or expertise in sustainability issues. And the specific charge was to make recommendations to the city council and the mayor about the best use of natural resources, with a emphasis on energy and water. And so, we spent probably our first year or two, kind of, I guess, getting a handle on, how we wanted to define our mission, how we want to define our vision. And those documents, I'm afraid I don't have them memorized in my head, but those are, I think they're available on our sustainability on the website. And, essentially have to do with, we talked a lot about both sustainability and resilience in terms of, what happens with natural resources, and also with a reference to the, probably a number of you are familiar with the idea of the triple bottom line of ecological issues and economic issues and issues of social equity having a relationship with each other. We found, I think in our first year or two, that it was a little bit difficult for us to address. There are a lot of different issues, obviously, that have to do with environmental sustainability. A lot of them, there are a lot of things that city government has a hand in. Everything from, maintaining roads and sewer systems to the way that police do their work, to firefighting. So there's a lot of different areas. So it was a little bit hard for us to, just kind of have, just to be reactive with having maybe some issue come up and then we would react to it. So what we did instead was to sit and make a climate action plan. And so, we talked through, what we thought was going to be the best way to be kind of taking the lead in terms of planning for what's likely to happen, what's already happening, and what may happen, and how to mitigate the worst effects of climate change, and how to try to prevent as much as we can with, it's kind of a small scope to have a single city. We talked about a bunch of different ways that we could achieve some of those goals, and then we put those together in a plan that we sent to the city council, and they adopted that as an official plan of the city. And so now, we have, Scott spends a lot of his time, and Kate spends her time, and some other city staff members who, kind of put their shoulder to the wheel and make that plan happen, the things that are in that plan happen. And so then we have already we did it in 2 parts. So we've already completed, both of those parts are in action right now. And a lot of what we do now is we take reports on how things are going with enacting that plan. Because obviously, when you're sitting in the year 2012 or 2013, you don't necessarily know that, in 2015, maybe we'll have an opportunity to have a bulk purchasing program for solar panels. So when that comes up, it's okay, that fits in the plan, it aligns with a specific goal, it might be a slightly new strategy. But, so that we can also, take a look at how we can best, and I guess maybe interpret the plan to do the things that arise. And then, of course, to monitor, we're going to be taking a look at, and Scott, I think, has the fun job of trying to figure out, are we actually lowering our carbon emissions over time, that we have an inventory that was pulled together by Scott and one of his predecessors, and that, well, actually several of his predecessors, that, and we're gonna be taking a look at, are these actions that we're doing, are they actually bringing down the emissions or not? We also did a sustainable water management plan, because again, you know, when the city council formed our commission, they wanted us to focus on energy and on water. And so we similarly have a water plan we get reports on pretty regularly. And so that's, I think, the bulk of what we do. And now that I've blah, 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 I'll maybe turn it to some of our other commission members to talk a little bit about. But I don't know if I
No, that's
missed
good.
anything, or there are other aspects of it that.
I think it was a
Perhaps.
great summary. You know, just one observation is that in my time being on the commission, the I guess, you know, like the topic of youth engagement and young people, that has been the most represented public participation
That's
that
true.
we've
That's
had
yeah.
at the commission. And so
Yeah.
I think that's worth just observing and,
Yeah.
and noting. And so whatever is the best way to, you know, to go with that and to, you know, to use that interest in engagement and, you know, to go to further our mission, you know, how do we meet our climate action plan goals and water goals, and you know, whatever else falls under our charge that improves life in Urbana, basically. I have an interest in, I think at the moment, I have an interest in keeping the conversation going, and you know, letting the conversation go and seeing what kind of pops up, and maybe we settle on an idea of something like, you know, a youth commission seat or some other structural thing. I'm not necessarily convinced that we have to agree on it right now, but anyways, I think this is really great, and I guess just, you know, figuring out how to keep it going would be perfect. And you know, I'm open to considering a youth commission seat if that seems like it makes, you know, the most sense.
Is there anybody else? Maybe we can just kind of open up the conversation of any either commission members or any of our guests that would like to, you know, just kind of, and maybe we'll just sort of suspend the Roberts rules for the moment, and as long as you're not talking over each other, we'll just have a conversation. That might be the
Okay.
easiest way to do things.
I do like the idea of a youth commission seat. I'd be interested in that position. I think that's a way in which people can get involved, and does anyone else think that way?
I also think so, because I think it's a terrific learning experience, as you said,
Yes.
for young people to see how things work and possibly input to change them also if they don't work well enough. I went to a presentation that the Beehive Collective gave us at the Civic Center, I think, some years ago, and I just, at the end of it, I was like, what are our kids learning in school, if not this? You know, it was. This is the most important issue of our times, and I don't understand how it's barely addressed at the high school, and how so few young people that I talk to have a clue about what's coming down on their heads. And so it's very, very important to have a voice of the young people here, and also a way of getting in on the action as much as possible.
Can I speak up? I was on the school board for 6 years, and there was a very large cohort of action on the national level about energy audits and things to be done in school buildings, because there's a tremendous amount of energy, water, that is used in these facilities. There was a big move to get a windmill at schools because of the open space that most schools have for their fields. And to me, city government tends to be so quiet and people don't know what happens. And I am so proud of the fact that Urbana has a sustainability commission and that you do great things, but people don't know about it. Another thing we did when I was on the Human Relations Commission was we made posters and just put them around the community for each month. It's ridiculous to say which ethnic group was focused on each month, but to make posters for the high school, I think having a partnership with each school would be a really important thing to do. And there are so many resources in this community. I don't know what the U of I people are here for, but there's so much sustainability work being done at, well, of course, Morgan, who's not here tonight. Well, can someone describe Morgan's job at the U of I? Well, no, we don't need to do that, but Scott is a terrific resource, and if I'm a taxpayer and I get to say where some of Scott's time should go, I would vote for putting some of it into the schools and working with the kids who in some ways are more educated than the older people are, and then bringing kids into how to do things.
I liked where you were going, and it gave me an idea. The teachers put a lot of their time into instruction, but a lot of it is very regimented, and sustainability does not get talked about. And so maybe inviting educators into this commission would reach more students than those that are sitting here.
Inviting educators is inviting teachers to...
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this is interesting too, because I was just thinking about, there are, a number of cities nationwide, even globally, that have commissions that are similar to this or have some kind of municipal function, and that it just seems to me like, maybe it's a appropriate topic in a civics class even, that this is sort of a current trend that's probably going to grow, if anything. Other comments or ideas? Or?
I'm thinking through, getting the public involved in commission meetings only helps, I think, energize the sense of direction the whole city has. And there's it's a great relationship between Scott as city staff and this commission. Even if the public didn't show up, the commission is also the public, and we think through and hear on the progress Scott makes, and in a way it gives his portfolio at work, public vetting, and he has permission to carve away at this stuff. So the commission helps set sort of the scope of work and its plans and documents, and when month by month we hear about progress, I can't say enough how amazing Scott is at actually getting the stuff done, but there's a good relationship there. And it just continues if the public participates in these hearings too, and in these meetings too, and puts things on our agenda and lets them, we have basically the public's attention on our scope of work. It sort of only accelerates that. So I was sort of thinking through in my mind, is it better for youth to be outside agitators or at the commission as a member of the commission, which is better? And I actually think they're probably, thinking it through by myself, it's probably better to be on the commission, because you're there over time, whether the public shows up or not, and you're able to help shape it at the table. But I think both things are important. I think having an agenda adequately publicized and having some kind of visible presence for students and whoever else to come and for our meetings to have a component that would be educational to the public as well, to encourage attendance and that kind of thing is all to the good. But yeah, no, in concept, I mean, I would welcome whatever solution it would be to encourage your involvement, because I think it helps what we're trying to do here, get the city moving faster on a sustainable course.
Yes.
So are you two university students? Am I understanding things wrong?
Yes, no, we are university students.
Oh, okay. Every time I talk with university graduates or those who are finishing degrees, I find so many people in environmental studies and combining anthropology or cultural studies with environmental studies, because the word has to get out all over the globe, and how do you get the word out? And I mean, I'm amazed at how aware the university students are, and the graduates. Their whole lifestyle is completely altered on the basis of these principles. When I went to visit Nutracycle, one of the performances by Pastor Power was at Nutracycle, and I was like, whoa, these people have changed all their day-to-day practices. They are really serious about saving water. They have a bucket instead of a tubing under the sink in the kitchen. They have all kinds of things that they're doing day by day that are concerned with sustainability matters. I mean, they're dead serious. And I haven't seen that kind of commitment anywhere except among the graduates of the U of I in this community. So
that's one of Morgan's functions, actually, is to be, she's one of the supervisors or the committee advisors for the Student Sustainability Committee.
Okay.
So there's a whole group of undergraduates and graduates that kind of have their own committee, and they actually decide how the money that they get from the fees get allotted for projects on campus.
I see.
So,
They get a lot of money.
yeah.
Something like $2 million a year, I think.
It's serious.
About $1 million.
Yeah.
You know, I know for a fact that they're one of the bigger pushers in the, trying to do is windmill, that's not the right word, wind power turbine. Kept getting shut down because costs kept going up and up, but you know, that's one of the things that they tried to push for. Didn't happen, unfortunately.
Although,
But the solar farm did.
yeah, the solar fund. The other thing is, because I was still at the university around the time that they scuttled that plan, but they took that money and they did retro commissioning across the campus, which really brought down a lot of the energy usage. There were some really dramatic results, especially in Robert Cranert Center had like about a third of a reduction of their power usage as a result.
Yeah, they're funding a retrofit
Yeah.
of all the lights.
Right, right.
To
And they
LEDs.
also they just cleaned out the HVAC system. And just even like, you know, there was, I remember one photo that showed a duct that was completely, it was clogged with literally a half an inch of dust. It was just clogged up. So you've got these, you know, you're trying to heat the building, and instead of the warm air going through the duct, it's getting blocked by all this dirt that just needed to be cleaned. So,
Well,
yeah.
if one person went to one school board meeting and suggested to the facilities people that they do that kind of audit, it might have an enormous result.
It's probably cost effective too over
It is, yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And it's also those nice, you know, kind of local jobs where, you know, you have to be on site to do it, so.
Supporting our economy as well.
Are there other, you know, comments or ideas that we want to get out on the table this evening?
Maria, I'd like to just mention
Yeah.
I've been holding back with mentioning some of the things we've already done because I didn't want to preempt or bias anything that any ideas that folks might want to share. But just a few things that we've been working on. We partnered with the Pastor Power Play and started low carbon diet teams, and we've got several churches that are doing low carbon diet teams right now. I think this is our third year, we've been working with Middle School Club, a Future City Club. They do a urban planning style, sustainability style planning competition in Chicago every winter. We speak at lots of U of I classes. There's a group of college students who I think maybe are trying to recruit some high school students as well. We're working on a national project called I Matter, which engages youth to work with their cities to make greenhouse gas reduction pledges. Our U-Cycle program does a lot of educational programs throughout the year with more grade school and middle school age kids. We have, most years we have some Energy Star Challenge interns who work with building owners and managers. They learn the Energy Star portfolio manager system and work with building owners and managers in the community to benchmark, track, and reduce their energy use on Portfolio Manager. We've worked on some engagement with the U of I GIS Club. We haven't developed a project yet, but I'm still hopeful that a project that is forward-looking or that we don't have staff time for ourselves, the U of I GIS Club could take on and do some interesting work. We worked with the library and some students who are in an after-school club at the library to install a pollinator monarch garden at the library. And then we also supported, it was the Illinois State project that worked with teachers at their Urbana Middle School to train teachers to integrate energy concepts into, I think mostly math classes, but maybe math and science classes, so that, you know, in terms of like a story problem, the story problem would be energy and climate related. So those are some of the things we worked on. Always open for new and interesting partnerships.
I'll just mention that there's a program called the Green Lunchroom Challenge, and it's geared towards schools reducing their food waste in the cafeteria, and it's open to any high school in Illinois.
That's good because a lot of middle schools and high schools don't even have like recycling bins in classrooms or like anywhere in the school, even if you look for them.
Do you know who oversees that program?
Yeah, it's the Illinois Sustainable Technology Center at the Prairie Research Institute at U of I, and the person running it is named Joyce Grocum.
Yeah, I think there might be some opportunities for projects that are in or at the schools themselves. Some things that would be interesting for students to take on and study, research, design, plan, implement. You know, for instance, recycling, like you mentioned, Saba, could be an interesting one at a school. Food waste, we actually partnered with a service learning class at U of I who got with students at, I think it was the middle school, and for one day they set up food scrap collection, and they took it to the compost bin that the school already had in the courtyard. And so they worked through, okay, you know, how do we do this? How do we work with teachers and faculty at the school and get the equipment necessary? And it was a challenge, and they learned a lot doing it, but it wasn't replicated. It really takes, you know, students, you know, they grade out, right? I think something that might be really important is to focus on getting a faculty, a teacher who's going to be there year on year and partnering with them, you know, as students and parents and community members.
I know at our school, the food service is corporate, and I've talked to the manager about other issues, dietary issues. But it seems really hard to bring up food waste because there's no incentive monetarily not to waste. You probably have to pay to get it
There
collected.
can be, because, you know, if the food is going to waste anyway, that vendor is losing money on all that food they're putting out there. So
Yes.
Well, it depends on how their contract is written though.
One time I was involved with a project that was some students in a dormitory they had to do some kind of environmental project. And so this one student just kind of noticed that there's a lot of napkins going in the trash. And it was kind of hard to take it serious, like, napkins, whatever. But so students stuck with it and, did some kind of sampling and, asked around and figured out how much the napkins cost, figured out how much, like the weight of napkins that were going in the trash. And he figured out that that dorm was spending something like $16,000 a year in napkin waste. And they changed the way that they dispense napkins as a result of that.
Wow. And
so, I guess the idea of that is, Sage, in response to your comment, sometimes maybe a response is, well, just either just going ahead and doing some investigation and poking around and asking questions and putting something together, and then maybe there's somebody who's helping you along the way to kind of cover some of the different issues. And so anyways, that's just one thought. And so one of the things that keeps popping up is different kinds of environmental projects that could happen in the schools. And I love that. And so I would sign up to help out with some kind of student-led projects in the schools. And I think this would be kind of a fun forum to. It'd be nice to to do something like that here. What's the latest on the environmental projects in the schools?
showpiece them.
Yeah. So that's the thought.
Are there any projects you talked about at the meeting you talked about?
Well, it'd only just began today. We talked briefly about, so recently we've done a lot of landscaping in the front, as well as we had a small garden on a piece of land that the school owns, but we were just thinking about irrigating it with rainwater instead of using the school's own water. I don't want to say budget, but costing the school money just to water plants and such, even just for landscaping and things where it's just decorative, that we can just somehow set up a rain barrel system or something to collect rainwater, simply because we have a large expanse of just flat roof, and we're not doing anything with it. So if we could use that to collect rainwater, the better. But also, briefly just spitballing, like, consider it a green roof, because again, we have a large expanse of just flat roof, and we're not doing anything with it. So we're kind of spitballing, but at the same time, we're trying to figure out how that would work. So, but yeah, it's only been up a day, so.
Which school are you at?
Urbana High School.
And I got a call from a teacher there. Did they start a garden, like a vegetable garden?
Yeah, it's very small. We're gonna work on expanding it.
Okay.
Well, I have one more suggestion. I know you're busy people and you have lots of things going. I just feel like this is so urgent and people don't talk about it, and kids don't talk about it, and people aren't upset. And I would actually encourage you to establish 2 seats, one middle school and one high school, because I think it's very hard for one student to be all alone. And I think that the synergism between the 2 campuses, which are right next to each other, and the teachers who are then involved. Dr. White is the one that I contacted at the high school, and she's very supportive. So I appreciate your interest, and I just think there's a lot of cross-pollination that could happen here, and I think that you've got great expertise sitting at this table. These are people who know how things happen. And I would invite them to your meetings. Don't be shy.
So what are avenues that you guys find out about, like, activities around town or that kind of thing? Like, do you use social media? Like, what's your favorite platform and how do you find out about stuff?
I usually find out through like people. I don't use a lot of social media.
Okay.
Often I hear about it after the fact.
But
I read it in the
in what
paper
way?
about how great it was.
In what way? From people talking, or?
From people talking at school, from my mother talking. She likes to review all the things that are going on in town. Sometimes I'll see it in the paper. Fantastic picture and caption. All the things I missed.
Hmm.
And I just heard from you about the beehive. It sounded really nice.
I don't typically hear about things unless I go actively searching for them, although Dr. White is a great resource and she brings a lot of things to the table that I normally wouldn't know about. But yeah, again, it's usually a lot of after the fact or just through the grapevine eventually gets to you, but it doesn't seem like it's advertised much. So I don't know if that's a position we should be taking, at least just increasing advertisement, even though, like, I don't know, advertisement just leaves a bad taste in my mouth, but it's kind of what we need to do.
Who's Dr. White?
Oh, she's the head agriculture teacher at Urbana High School.
What's her first name?
Oh, Joni.
Okay.
And she's the teacher working with
This club.
Mhm.
Great. Go ahead and chime in, you haven't
Hi,
yet, so.
I'm not from the area. I'm a university student, but it's the first mission I've ever been to. But I'm already getting the sense, like, where I'm asking the question that why doesn't this committee, instead of meeting at the Public Works building, why doesn't it have a rotation and meet at like the public schools, like every time we meet? Like that way, you could reach a broader base of the city, and then the local community could hear it.
We did in our early years have a discussion of not necessarily that idea, but something kind of similar of like just having individual commission members go and attend meetings of other groups around in the community. I think logistically it can be a little bit tricky because we have Open Meeting Act from the state of Illinois that we comply with, so that it's just a lot less staff time to have the meeting in one place each time, as far as getting those notices out where they need to go out, and for members of the public to kind of know where we're located. And then, of course, things like, Kate having her files handy in her office here instead of having to carry them out. So there are logistic, but I think that, I'm just, I don't want to say that that's not a reason that we shouldn't do it, but just that I think that some of that.
We typically don't meet here, we meet
It's
in
usually
the city
city
council
council
chambers.
Oh, okay.
Right, but they had a meeting tonight, so we were bumped.
Yeah. But it's a point well taken to go out into some of the groups rather than just, kind of sitting back at city facilities, whether it's here or at the chambers. So,
I was thinking that maybe is there a website for like environmental things going on in Urbana and Champaign?
there are actually quite a few,
Okay.
if you include, because the university has website, we have a sustainability website that I think it both has things that our commission does and then things that the city staff does, the recycling program, and
CCNet.
right. Trying to think if there are
There's a lot of websites where events and activities get posted. I find that I'm most successful promoting an event through email marketing. That seems to be where most people are finding it. Hard as it is to imagine, now a lot of folks are choosing and actively going to the city website and seeking out those posts. So.
What if there was a collection of events that people could attend that was distributed, I was thinking to teachers, but to the community as well. Because it's a lot of different places to...
Look for field trips, or like
Field trips, yes, and
for teachers to learn anything.
I was thinking of after-school activities to share with the students that are going on about sustainability. Maybe there aren't very many activities that fit that niche, but
Yeah.
maybe
And
collecting
I think
them.
there are some things that are, and I wish Morgan was here tonight, because I know she cited a couple of them that happen throughout the year. Because some of our discussion previous was, that there are organizations that actually do, host events or put on events, and, a little bit of, would, not wanting to replicate efforts that are already afoot, but, certainly coordinating in some way to get word out. And I'm just curious about, it sounded like people mostly hear about events more through word of mouth than formal venues, and maybe identifying some of the, because there's always like some person's kind of the hub of everything that's going on. Like, who are those people, and get the word out to them.
A very good resource for the high schools and the middle schools to pursue is there's an organization called the Alliance for Climate Education. Their website is acespace.org. They came to my school a few years ago. They're completely free. They do accept donations, but they're free. They have free assemblies, very educational. They also acted as a contact for the environmental club at the high school for many years, and they give some many good ideas, and it sort of made it like a game where they give you points, like the clubs, the environmental clubs points whenever they did environmental projects and initiatives.
Could you say the name of that organization again?
The Alliance for Climate Education, acespace.org.
There was a time when Ameren Act on Energy had some programming somewhat similar to what you're describing for schools. I don't think that's ongoing, but they're going to start a new program year, a new program cycle. This fall, I believe, is when they submit for it. So, I don't know what'll be in that submittal. It might be something like that.
Other comments or ideas? It's, Ashley, it's been a really great conversation. It's a lot of, good thoughts brought to the table. Before we leave the agenda item as such, I just want to see, did any of the commission members want to propose any particular action this evening, or do we want to think it through and take up possible action next time? I think either way is certainly fine, but I don't want to leave the topic if folks are, if anybody's itching with a motion or a resolution that you want to get on the table tonight.
I think I need some time to think about it, what everyone's mentioned, so.
And something I'll just, put out is, it may be that we want to revisit the climate action plan and the water plan and include some strategies that have to do with some of the suggestions that were made here. Again, just to, kind of throw something on the substantial list that we've gathered this evening, so.
I don't know. I guess I'm a little bit swayed. So, I'm interested in taking up the idea and seeing what people think about it.
What does that look like? A recommendation to the mayor?
I think it would require an ordinance change.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Because our charge and our structure is in an ordinance.
Yeah.
So to change our structure, we have to change the ordinance. Okay.
And I don't know if, logistic, like things like quorum and, what does all that mean? One thing is, short of the ordinance change, try it out, you know, say something like, well, if you know, we need time to, you know, look at, you know, what's required for an ordinance change or something. I mean, there's, so we could move to, you know, move to add a seat, or recommend that the mayor or council add a seat, or we could try it out. And, you know, now that I say that, I'm not, you know, it just kind of falls flat. To my ears, at least. So, anyways.
What about a student shadow? What if some members of the committee had student shadows that would, like...
It's a little like what we're doing now. It's they would be here to observe and such.
Yes, and maybe, I don't know, maybe an informal briefing on what they were doing in the committee, and as an informal position, they wouldn't have a vote and wouldn't need an ordinance change for that to happen.
So kind of, yeah, like just attend as a guest and then...
Yes.
There, but with the understanding that that commission member would talk back and forth with that person. Mm-hmm.
What would the What would the procedure be in adding an agenda item for some sort of youth report that did not, you know, have to come from any one particular student in the community, but if there was one student in the community that typically came and gave that monthly report, could we add that as an agenda item? Okay. And would that, you know, it doesn't sound like it would take an ordinance to affect that change, and could kind of go along with the sort of student shadow program and see how that sort of works out.
Sure. We can have an agenda item on every month, you know, for youth participation. Kate just mentioned that there may be an issue that you may have to be 18 to cast a vote on a commission, so we'll have to double check that.
Yeah, the Human Relations Commission student position is a non-voting.
Non-voting.
Non-voting, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
And I think that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, but I think that's a workable idea to go with right away, is to have a shadow position or a shadow committee. You know, that so. I typically talk with Maria a couple weeks before the meeting and discuss if members have an interest in particular agenda items. I could certainly do the same for the students. And you know, if that month no one was going to come, we wouldn't have the special agenda item. But as long as they were going to come, we could have the special agenda item just for student participation, and that would be easy.
It might be really hard to get like multiple youth members on the committee, but for me and probably for a lot of other people, I would feel like way less intimidated if there was like more than one on the committee. So I think the more.
Yeah, but since, like with that shadow idea, you know, it could be more than one. It could be however many.
Right. Yes. I was thinking that.
So that kind of opened it up, and I think also address some of, you know, the concerns that were expressed, you know, within the commission about, you know, that it was kind of limited just to have one, because then that way it's more than one, and it's a little more flexible for the student as well. So.
And maybe the group of students could be their own group that, say there's a person from each school that's in contact, and so they kind of all share what's going on.
That's true, because then it kind of proliferates out to the different schools.
Do we need a motion for that?
No.
Okay.
I was going to say it would just be if we needed to send something to the council for a request.
Yeah, I do like that idea.
But I think, if we have consensus, then it's just a matter of figuring out what the next step would be.
Maybe students who are here tonight, if you want to leave your email on the list before you go, we can loop you in and see if this idea goes.
Okay. Well, thank you for your participation in the meeting tonight and bringing
I'll
forth
leave this
sort of your
for you now.
concerns and ideas. I think this is great. All right, we'll be collecting email addresses.
All right. Great.
Can I look at clipboard with you?
Yeah.
You right on the table.
All right. Well, if you want to just, continue to pass that around, I think we'll go ahead and move to our next agenda item, which is under communications, and it's our staff report.
So first I've got some updates on the Climate Action Plan. Goal 1, Action 6, evaluate opportunities to retrofit existing outdoor lighting with more energy efficient lighting. Staff is evaluating the viability of a guaranteed energy savings contract, sometimes called ESCO which is short for Energy Services or Savings Company. It's where we would bid out for a company that would evaluate all of our buildings, all of our systems, mechanical systems, lighting, could even include fleet, street lights, and they would put all of those different potential retrofits into one big project, and they would evaluate a certain amount of savings that would generate, and they would guarantee that, do the retrofit work, and then the city would take out a 10 or a 20-year loan and pay off the retrofit of that equipment. According to state statute, to follow this procedure, the savings on the retrofits have to be greater than the initial cost of the retrofit. So if these companies, these energy services companies come in and they look at everything and they can't generate that much savings, then you don't have a project and you don't move forward. If you do, you can move forward. So we're looking.
Can you explain that criteria again?
The savings from, if we replace...
The savings in the first year?
No, over the term of the loan.
Okay.
10 or 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So the savings from, say, replacing most of the street lights with LED and replacing a boiler and replacing a chiller, we're going to pay for that all up front, in year one, but the savings are over 20 years. So if the savings over 20 years are greater than that invoice in year one, we can follow that procedure. The state has some rules.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And DCEO just got their funding restored, and they have a technical assistance service that will help cities go through this process A to Z. So we're partnered with them. They're going to provide us that support. So we're going to pursue this until there's some insurmountable barrier, and we'll see what happens. Goal 3, Action 4, propose strategies to improve local on-site renewable energy market. Similar to solarroadmap.com, which we worked on about a year ago, we are again evaluating some of our planning, zoning, permitting, and market development activities to achieve a US DOE Sol Smart designation. It's very similar to the solarroadmap.com program, where there's a menu of best practices, and you try and do as many as you can to make your planning, zoning, permitting, solar market development as advantageous to solar development as you can. Some of the differences with this program is if we get bronze level designation, it unlocks some technical assistance for the city. So at that point, they can start working on some more advanced projects with us, such as evaluating additional solar activities that could include new solar developments, We may also, and I'm going to talk about PACE in a little bit, we may also be able to have them support us in preparing the city for PACE, and I'll explain that a little bit later. Questions on that?
You mentioned having to achieve a certain level of qualification. You said a bronze certification.
Yeah.
What sort of elements are part of gaining that certification?
So similar to solarroadmap.com, they have a couple thematic categories.
Okay.
I tend to call them planning, zoning, permitting. Sometimes they use different words for more or less the same things. And solar market development is another one. Within those thematic categories, there are best practices like make sure that the cost of a solar permit is within the the national norm, and there's a formula for that. Streamline the permitting. There's a couple different ways you can do that. We've done some of these things. There are a couple that we haven't done yet that are in the SolSmart menu of activities that I think are doable, and we're going to look at that. There might be a little bit more we can do in the zoning, and so the planning division is looking at that. And then one of the differences between SolSmart and Solar Roadmap, you just get a percentage of the whole. That's kind of your score, and you have the option of making all of your information a public profile, which we did. SolSmart, as far as I can tell, doesn't have that public profile platform online, but instead of this percentage bar, they have 3 levels, kind of like LEED. It's bronze, silver, and gold. And they want to drive at least a minimum level of performance for the cities they're working with to at least bronze. And so at bronze, then we can get some additional technical assistance on some bigger impact projects. Some additional solar or additional energy and climate activities, some things that weren't explicitly in our climate action plan. Maybe a year and a half ago, staff had engaged the Champaign County Realtors Association in a discussion about whether it was possible and desirable to incorporate green or sustainable certifications in their MLS system, their multiple listing service. So when you go to buy a house, you might go to the MLS listing, and you might be looking for 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Well, there's actually a long list of items that the people selling houses can mark as characteristics of their house. And what we had proposed was that LEED certification, Energy Star certification, these types of third-party certifications could also be characteristics that a seller of a home or commercial property could check off as, yeah, my building has a certification. And then that does a couple things. One, it allows the seller to try and get some value out of that. So if there's buyers that are interested in that, they might be willing to pay a little bit more. There's lots of market studies about LEED, and LEED certified buildings do get commercial buildings do get a premium. Renters pay more per square foot in LEED certified buildings. The other thing it does is it gives buyers an opportunity to filter what they're looking for a home or a commercial property with these characteristics, LEED or Energy Star, whatever it might be. And Passive House we included in there too. And so I followed up with them a couple times, and they had some changeovers in leadership and participants in their committee, and they got back to me recently and said, yeah, we've done that. We did that a long time ago. So that's now in the Champaign County MLS. The city of Chicago and probably other cities was kind of the inspiration for this. They have a really extensive green incorporation into their MLS. Lots of different features, from low flow fixtures that you can check off all those types of things in their MLS.
I was thinking about solar panels given the recent program.
Yeah. We had pitched kind of a simple approach, or a baby steps approach, which is here's some brands that are third-party certified that are broadly recognized. LEED, Passive House, Energy Star. Let's work on those and see what happens. So there's always people saying, well, why would I do that if it doesn't make my property more valuable? And then the other thing is, well, how do I communicate that my property has these characteristics? So hopefully we're cracking that.
A couple of comments or thoughts on this because I'm interested. Going through the process of home buying, I've looked at a lot of listings on Zillow and Realtor.com and all the places that you can buy a house from. And it doesn't seem to me like if I go through that type of service that I can automatically see anything about whether or not that home is energy efficient or not. And I thought that the MLS was a multiple listing service that's sort of nationally based. So are you saying that counties or particular localities can edit the fields that they have on the MLS to either incorporate some of these things?
Yes.
That is really interesting, I think, for number one. And then secondly, I feel like even if they think they've been doing it for a year and a half, and maybe they have been, I am curious as to what sorts of education they receive. It doesn't take much to say energy efficient furnace, and when you get to the house, it's an 80% furnace, which, yes, used to be the most efficient furnace you can buy on the market, but now that's not the case. Now you might be looking for a 95% furnace. So is there any, what education can we do in encouraging that dialogue to support education for them that isn't just about making the sale, but is actually reporting accurately on what the how energy efficient that home may be, especially if not that many homes in the Champaign area have a LEED certification or a Energy Star certification maybe yet.
Yeah, I had followed up with my contact there about how they had incorporated that and how it works, because it's not apparent going to their website. And I think that it's a great idea to engage the association and offer some education on what do these terms mean. Now it's available in your system. Now they might be more interested in learning about what it means, because it's a lot more relevant to them now. So I think that's a really good idea, and I think we can definitely offer that.
Well, if it's, you said a minute ago that the city of Chicago has lots of those green attributes that are listable. So, I see it as a question of like, well, how much data is out there? Is there enough data, and can we access it and just do the statistics on it? And, like presence of attributes, and what does that mean for a price listing? And do we see any differentiation in those things? Not that price differentiation is the only thing, but I think that's a key thing that gets attention of a lot of people.
Another thing is like the carbon footprint of a house, so the absolute performance. Because you could have a 5,000 square foot house that has 15 checkbox items that uses 5 times as much as a small house, and trees or these other things. I realize it's a whole other thing altogether to like disclose your utility bills, even if you did have it as what I get those emails from Amaranth saying, hey, guess what? You earn, and I'll disclose here, more than the average house. You use more than the average energy of houses your size. But that's something they feel free to spam me about. So I don't know. But to me that is, lists of attributes, I don't oppose it, but I don't necessarily think that it correlates directly to the environmental performance of the house.
It's a generalization. It gives a hint, as given the example you shared. Yeah, there are ways where it may not tell the full picture.
No, in fact, I think you can predict that houses that are larger and wealthier are going to have these amenities that are checkbox.
Well, there are. I think there are some MLS systems that have integrated HERS rating, and those are things that are probably a little more by the square foot. And so that's a possibility to integrate in the future. There are certain housing markets that are really hot, where they've been able, where the cities have required mandatory energy disclosure. it's a lot easier when your housing market is really hot.
It's burning. Yeah,
So-
exactly. Okay.
I think the value is that, so it's true, like the certifications do not necessarily correlate to, but I guess what I think is that the likelihood is that in general, if you look at a population of buildings, if you have this population that have these attributes, probably they're going to have overall better performance. And you'll see some overlap in some other things.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's, I'm just, that I'm speculating here. But I think my interest in the data is that if we see an appreciable sales price difference, that can change that sends a market signal that builders respond to. So that could change that could change things on the, for like the people who are making decisions like, I don't want to spend that extra money, like nobody cares. It might, if there's a price difference, then it might change that.
I don't dispute that. It is great. It does sort of create. I have to think it through, but it's like everyone's chasing that energy savings premium, so it doesn't go to the. It's not savings to the homeowner. It's a premium for the builder, or it's this or it's that. But it's all that increment. But and ultimately, yes, we do want to see more energy efficient homes built. So.
Do we have an efficient way of getting data, like from Chicago in MLS?
I have no idea. I don't know if they would export their data set or not. I don't readily see an export button on their websites.
Yeah, that's.
I think one thing that I would be interested in is looking at, are there any cities in the U.S. that are sort of comparable in size and composition that already have programs like this in place, and then see if they've already done some sort of study looking at, on average, homes that are more energy efficient sell at a certain premium, whether that is a certain percentage because of the value added of guaranteed energy savings over the use of the home.
I wonder if some of the organizations that do the credentialing would have some of that data.
Probably.
Certainly, Lee has done some studies on
that.
Of course, the county appraiser courts, they recording sales of properties, so that data is out there to be accessed. But it probably isn't necessarily correlated with which houses are, what the energy performance is at houses. That's a different data set. And in cities where the property records and the utility records are the same city, the same municipal government, they can do that study without disclosing individual energy use at individual houses. It's not the situation here. The energy data is at the utility company. Property sales data, which I suppose is probably publicly accessible, is at the county. So it's a little bit different, but given that some cities do have that all under one umbrella, probably some of them have done that study.
I'll see if I can dig around and find something, because it's got to be out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to announce, because I said I had to think it through. I get it now. I see why it's good to have the seller recoup their investment on sale. And so a buyer, because I was thinking, like, why, great, we're going to make those houses more expensive to buy. What's the point? If somebody wants to make money, they can buy a house without it and install it themselves and recoup it on sales, get their energy selling. But over time, you'll install more that way if you can recoup it on sale. Okay, sign me up. I support.
Check those boxes.
It would also be an interesting little, I don't know what type of program, and maybe we talk about it a lot sort of further and eventually come up with some sort of proposals, but it could be a little incentive on Urbana home. I don't know, I'm just thinking about ways to incentivize Urbana. I understand that what you're talking about sounds like sort of a county-wide program. but it seems like the Urbana market is a little bit slower than Champaign, and maybe building in Urbana is a little bit slower than Champaign. If this is a way to spur business, not business growth, but economic development in Urbana itself, I wonder if there are any opportunities down the pipeline. That's sort of where my thoughts go with it.
Urbana implemented a very substantial economic development incentive package for new developments. It's live now, and I don't know a lot about it. It's run by the Economic Development Division, but it's pretty substantial. We've talked a number of times with other staff at the city and tried to play out scenarios about incentivizing LEED, Energy Star Passive House, and it was hard to imagine a scenario where we could create an incentive, which means we're giving up tax dollars, right? We're giving up revenues that we'd otherwise have to incentivize or induce additional Energy Star LEED Passive House construction or retrofit. And so we were quite worried that what we would in fact end up doing is not inducing additional, but rewarding ones that were already going to happen. At which point we're just giving away money that, tax dollars. If we could, be convinced that, there's scenarios out there that would create additionality, I'd definitely be interested in that. There's some, I think there's some of these programs in Ohio. A couple of the cities are incentivizing LEED. There's essentially no studies on the effectiveness. They promote it as being very effective, but they're also, they're redeveloping anyhow. So what was going to happen otherwise? So it's a tricky one. Sage?
How do you incentivize retrofits on houses that have already been built? Because I know that building a new house takes a lot of years. Rebuilding a house to be sustainable takes a lot of years to pay off. Maybe 80 years is what I've heard.
A couple ways. So, common ways are to reduce or waive permitting fees and other cash grants and rewards. When you look at our building fees, getting a couple $100 back for spending a couple $1,000s extra, we're not sure that that's going to be a sufficient inducement. What is a much bigger inducement is what, as I mentioned, some of the cities in Ohio are doing is a tax abatement, and it's a 10 or 20-year tax abatement. One of the potential problems there is that they may be giving back far more money than what the extra investments cost. So, or what the extra value added to the property is going to be. And they're also conflating it seems to me that they're conflating the additional value to the property that would have come from a standard new home with additional value to the property that comes from a more energy efficient home. They're sort of not separating those out. I'm not sure that they're separating those out. So we've looked at it a lot, and so far I haven't found a really good model for us yet. Staff has done some public engagement. I mentioned we're going to be supporting the middle school's Future City Club again. Depending on schedules, they may come and present again to the SAC and or the Planning Commission. So we'll be supporting them. The work on the competition will be all this fall, and then the presentation in Chicago is January. U-Cycle had an interesting opportunity to partner with an apartment property manager who has mostly campus apartments. They were interested in getting some ad support for placing a reusable tote bag with every new apartment. And so we were able to stuff the tote bag with U-Cycle information. That's really important because these are high turnover, so students that are moving to Urbana for the first time, but then moving out or moving from Champaign last year to Urbana this year. And so it's not a scenario where you at your house where you've lived there for 10 years, you already know, you learned about U-Cycle 9 years ago, you don't need to be told again. These are apartments where there's a different tenant, so we always have to get a new brochure into the hands of that tenant. And so that was a nice partnership. Essentially, the cost of an advertisement, we were able to get someone else to go to all those apartments, or perhaps when they sign leases, get our information in the tenant's hands. We were able to schedule and pay for another electronics recycling with our other municipal partners in the county. We're doing something different, pretty excited about it. Instead of, there's only so many cars we can get through on our electronics recycling. I think it's something like 400. So instead of knowing that we have about 400 cars we can service and having 1,000 cars show up, and it's like first come, first serve, and if you're 401, you wait 3 hours or whatever it is and you don't get to drop your electronics, we found a service, and I think they give you a trial period for free, where you can do an online reservation system. So there's 400 time slots, or whatever the number is, and community members that need to drop off electronics for proper recycling, simply for free sign up for that time slot, and then they show up at that time slot. There will be a short line, I'm sure, still, but because people will be coming at certain times, it should go a lot smoother. Still number 401 who didn't get a time slot doesn't get to recycle their TV with us, but at least they don't show up and wait. So I'm hoping that that's going to really improve our process. I think by now actually all the slots are full. So yeah, so
2 weeks ago now.
Yeah, but I think that's an indication of how much equipment is out there to be recycled. U-Cycle also had a tent at Sweet Corn Festival as usual. You probably know the last few years U-Cycle has been collecting corn cobs for composting at Sweet Corn Festival. However, every year there's always been some problem and we haven't actually been able to deliver that load to the Landscape Recycling Center. So for instance, contamination in the load, lots of garbage in those, with the corn cobs. There's a certain point where it's too much, it's, contaminates the product. But in the end, this has to be a saleable product. We have to be able to sell it as compost to make the Landscape Recycling Center work. But this year we were able to keep contamination down, successfully deliver a load to the Landscape Recycling Center. Right. So we have our first test of a food scrap load, a fairly significant sized food scrap load. And so it's already covered up and it's composting, and we'll see what it looks like in 6 months or 12 months maybe.
What method did you use to keep contamination down?
Volunteers.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. If you're looking for something to do next year at Sweet Corn Festival.
That's old technology.
Yeah, the old-fashioned one. Our next regularly scheduled meeting, we're going to need to move to the second Tuesday, if that's amenable to everyone, as I will be out of the office.
Okay. Are there any remaining questions or comments on the staff report? All right, let's take a look at a PACE presentation.
Okay. This is pretty short, hopefully. PACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. It is, it's really it's kind of a financing mechanism, it's kind of a payment mechanism. PACE allows for a different kind of way to finance energy efficiency or renewable energy installations on existing buildings. What it does is it allows the loan that a property owner takes from an investor or from a lender, and the property owner repays that loan to the city in the form of a property assessment. kind of like a tax, but technically not a tax. It's a voluntary property assessment. And then the city, or the property appraiser in our case, sends that payment to the lender. So it's a three-party agreement. Why do that? PACE provides a number of benefits. I guess I'll speak now. The benefits are it creates a much more secure loan for the lender, and it allows the repayment of the loan to stay with the property because it's a property assessment, a 20-year property assessment, a 10-year property assessment, whatever it might be. So if the property owner sells the property and moves on, it's not complicated, doesn't need to worry about this loan, construction loan essentially that they took out in their name. It's not in their name, it's on a property assessment, voluntary property assessment, and it stays with their property. So I have City of Milwaukee's description of it here. They have a really nicely arranged PACE program, fairly successful. They're doing millions of dollars worth of energy efficiency and renewables projects every year. Pretty substantial amount of money. Some background, the Federal Housing Authority, you may remember that PACE came up years ago, and the Federal Housing Authority said that they advised their partner agencies, Fannie and Freddie Mac, who own or eventually buy many loans, mortgages throughout the country. They're the biggest mortgage holders in the country. Not to purchase mortgages that were secondary to a PACE loan. So essentially that meant that any household, any individual house, because Fannie and Freddie are only residential, not commercial, any house that had a PACE loan on it would have a very, very difficult time selling their house, because almost everybody has a loan that eventually gets sold to Fannie or Freddie. That kind of put the brakes on residential PACE, and there are very few residential PACE programs throughout the country. What's happened recently, you may have heard, which is why we're doing this talk today, is that the Housing Authority has advised that they may in fact purchase loans that have a PACE property assessment on them under certain conditions. I won't go into the conditions, I don't think. They're pretty mild, they're doable, not overly obstructive. The Federal Housing Finance Administration continues to have serious concerns about residential PACE, so it's not totally clear skies. For Illinois, it's the residential side of PACE is moot because right now state statute only allows for commercial PACE programs. And this is the public act. This is the entire state statute, by the way. It's one sentence. Technically it authorizes cities to create PACE programs whereby, or cities or county property appraisers, tax collectors, whereby someone can work with the tax collector and a lender and get a loan placed on their property assessment, install a bunch of energy efficiency and renewables right away, and pay for it long term instead of construction loan short term. However, while it's technically legal in Illinois, I've talked to PACE lenders, national PACE lenders, and what they've said is this is a very vague law. Most states have very explicit long PACE authorizing legislation, and that it is unlikely that any national PACE lender is going to enter this market and work with a local PACE program given this law.
Even on the commercial side?
Even on the commercial side. And that's all we have in Illinois anyway.
Mm-hmm.
All we have is commercial. However, there is a piece of legislation that's been introduced in Illinois that would do exactly what the PACE lenders want in terms of a bigger, better, more explicit description of how PACE shall be done in the state of Illinois. One of the interesting things that I've noted here that it does is it requires that any third-party administrator of the PACE program has to be a nonprofit organization. So what would that third party do? So if the tax collector says, yeah, we'll put a special assessment on it if somebody asks for it for energy efficiency according to state law, and say there's commercial properties out there that are interested, and there are lenders in the country that are interested, what the third-party PACE administrator does is promotes that and manages the process, streamlines the process, standardizes application forms, interprets the laws and the state statute and the local rules, and basically facilitates that whole process, facilitates the lenders, the property owners, and the tax collector. They're typically, in other states, there are people with some real estate and or financial and or legal experience. In a lot of other states, they are private companies that are doing this, and of course it's time, so they have to take a fee. And a nonprofit organization, of course, is going to take a fee as well. Some of these PACE programs seem to have some pretty excessive fee taking. The percentage of the fees per transaction is pretty high, and I think that's probably why the folks who crafted this law wrote in that third-party administration needs to be a nonprofit organization. So, what else? We are essentially stuck. Residential PACE. The skies are a little clear, but not totally clear. Plus, it's not in our state statute. This proposed law, I don't think that changes. I think it's still just commercial PACE. Commercial PACE, we're stuck until this or something similar passes. And what I hear from statewide advocates for environmental rules like this is that this is not at the top of the state legislature's priorities, since we don't have a budget. So, what to do about that? Certainly support passage of this proposed legislation, so that'll truly enable local communities to have a PACE program, and perhaps prepare our own city for the eventual passage of this rule. So there are some ordinances and rules and manuals and application forms that at some point will need to be prepared if a local property appraiser, tax collector decides that they're going to support that. So one thing we could do, and this ties back in with this whole SMART designation and technical assistance, is have all that ready to go with an eye towards this law or something similar being passed, so that when it is passed, we have a county tax collector, so it probably makes sense to have a county-wide PACE program, so that when it is passed, our county can be the first in the state to actually stand up a PACE program. Like I said, it's a very, very effective facilitator of investment or loan into energy efficiency and renewables on existing buildings. So it's really big. Could be really big. Could be. I mean, if you scale down Milwaukee's millions of dollars in population to Champaign County, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in loans just for energy efficiency and renewables. Obviously, there is some amount of loans already going on for energy efficiency, probably a small amount for renewables, if any. But I think this would really drive that up. I think that's it.
I'm wondering, are the conversations always, Champaign County, or is there ever? And I think it makes sense, but sometimes I wondered, are you talking about maybe Urbana would do, a PACE, or is it always we're just always thinking, Champaign County?
It could be either way.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it seems the cities and the tax collector, and they don't spend any money on this. There's no cash incentives, nothing like that. They may choose, and probably most of them do, to have a small fee on each deal to recover their staff time costs.
Right.
But it's really just about cost recovery.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to make money on this particular deal. So really, the most of the work, it appears to me, is going to be at the tax collector's office, whatever office is creating the special assessment, voluntary special assessment. That said, if I do think that with the eventual law that will be passed, a city ordinance will have to be passed. Maybe just the county ordinance that applies to the tax collector. I'm not certain how that'll shape out. But it could be that another city in the county says, I don't like the looks of that, and I don't want to participate, and maybe just the tax collector in the city of Urbana agree on a PACE program, and that proceeds. There's a lot of logic to doing it countywide as long as no one objects.
Sure.
And why would they?
Right.
It doesn't reduce taxes, it doesn't cost the city anything, it improves the value of the property. It seems like, triple win there.
Mm-hmm.
But we can do it on our own if others weren't ready.
Got it.
To recap though, it sounds like the state needs to do some work on strengthening
Yeah.
the statute for PACE.
And the law that would do it has already been introduced.
Okay. And that would be relatively, or essentially budget neutral
It is.
to the state budget.
It doesn't cost the state a thing. It also drives economic activity, right? As was mentioned earlier, if all of a sudden we have a couple $100,000 in additional insulation going in buildings in Champaign County, someone here's got to install that installation.
We're curious to see, find out rather, just not even to play devil advocate rather, but just out of curiosity, are there any negative effects to this bill being passed? And if so, what would they be? I don't know.
What were the Fannie and
Good
Freddie's
question.
grave concerns about residential PACE are what? They do have to do with the
So
place
wanna
of
be
their
second in
loan.
line.
They don't want something in
Exactly.
front of their loans.
technically, it's a special assessment, so it's in front of the mortgage holder.
Mm-hmm.
However, if the loan fails, it does not accelerate.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't the whole value doesn't automatically go onto the tax sale.
Mm-hmm.
So once that property eventually turns over, the special assessment is still there for the next remainder 16 years or whatever,
Mhm.
at the same rate.
Mm-hmm.
So while technically it is first in line, practically speaking, it's not. Also, the failure rate failure rate on PACE loans is extremely small. You're not going to take out a big loan, do a bunch of work on a building. Also, there's a lot of due diligence that's written into these statutes. So you end up there's a vetting process that ends up happening, so you end up not doing.
So
work.
if
For
houses
instance-
are empty and don't sell and are just sitting empty, the tax bills typically go unpaid on those houses, or does it depend?
It depends, but yeah, it may.
Okay.
Yeah. Just like ESCO, how it has to pay for itself, that's also in every state's PACE law.
Mm-hmm.
So theoretically, you would never have an energy efficiency or renewables project funded through PACE that didn't pay for itself
Mhm.
over the term.
Right.
Does having the loan that's still needing to be paid back make it harder to sell the property within the 20-year time frame?
Presumably not. So someone may be interested in, say, a commercial property, and they check the tax records and they go, oh, there's a special assessment on here. There's an additional cost that I have to pay per month if I buy this property. They may see that as a barrier. They may not understand what it's about, and they may go, not even
Yes.
investigate it and go somewhere else. So to your question, what might be the unintended negative consequences? On the other hand, if they're a more sophisticated buyer, then they go, an energy efficiency special assessment, a PACE special assessment. Well, I know what PACE is. I know that this thing pays off over time, and that whatever I'm spending on the special assessment is probably given back to me in energy efficiency. This is a more energy efficient house or commercial building in this case. So hopefully that's that's
Educating
the
the
outcome.
buying public, I guess, is kind of
Connect the dots. There'll be check boxes on the
Yeah.
MLS form. What it qualifies for as a result of their installation.
So you have two points up there, like in terms of preparation. any speculation on how long that takes? You know, getting prepared, saying like, all right, let's do it.
You know, I don't think I've asked that question of the other PACE programs. I've talked to the county, it's the tax collector is the relevant office, and they're open to the idea, and I think it would just be a technical challenge. I think that, you know, let's say the law passed tomorrow and we're like, oh, let's go do this. I have shorter timelines and they're probably realistic, but I would think a year. It should be ready to go. It should be done. Now, if we are able to work with SoulSmart and start working on some of this stuff, I don't think we need to have it done in a year. I don't think it's.
Yeah.
I hate to be pessimistic, but
Would there be any interest in this commission formulating a resolution in support of the state passing a law for peace? And since I've only been here for 3 months, what steps would have to be taken to make that happen?
We've done that before, and typically it's one or the other of us will draft something, or we'll do the agonizing thing of a group writing. Since there's a little longer time frame,
Okay.
you can just draft something, and you can get it on the agenda and vote it up or down.
clarifying question, would you want to have a letter sent to, who would you want to have a letter sent to, and who would it be from? The commission, or would you be asking mayor and or council to communicate with elected officials? Those two things.
I haven't thought through that part.
Yeah,
I'm
the
not sure what the best
letters.
avenue would be.
Marty, can you talk about what's been
Both of
done in
those.
the past?
Yeah, I'm trying
Does
to.
this
I know
commission
we.
ask, or if they go to the council?
Yeah, I think we've done both
Mm.
actually. Because there was the long-term transportation plan. I think we just sent something directly to the.
Oh, we sent comments into
and that
that's
was right.
but we haven't communicated with legislators
But right.
directly.
But I'm thinking there was something with the sanitary district that I think we again did that.
Yeah,
I
they're
think they went to the
excellent.
council though.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Okay,
it's,
with
I
the
think it went to
council.
the city council.
Mm-hmm.
Now we get more leverage.
I think it does
Yeah.
because then it's more officially as
Yeah.
the city
Yeah, city
that's
policy.
saying it.
Mm-hmm.
I like saying it to the city council. I also like to the county because that's another, that's another important administrative stakeholder in this thing.
Maybe I could volunteer to come up with some of that language or do some research into other organizations that have passed some sort of resolution on this, and I can send that to. Okay,
I can
send it
work
to
with you on
Scott.
that.
Okay.
We'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay.
I like that.
Make me a note to get, yeah.
All right.
I like to kind of keep track of what we got going on. All right. Any other questions, comments on PACE tonight? All right. We'll turn to new business. We have none before us. Turn to announcements. We have a couple that were sent along ahead of time. The IC Congress on September 12th to 14th at the Alice Campbell Alumni Center. And the Green Infrastructure Conference, September 15th at the iHotel. Do we have any other announcements, Steve?
I have one. There is annually there's an Illinois Bike Summit that is put on by Ride Illinois and Champaign County Bikes. This year it is in Bloomington Normal, and the date is September 19th. That's a Monday. It does not cost a lot to register. There's usually 250 or so bike advocates, but lots of transportation professionals who go for a day of continuing ed and how to plan cities with complete streets and that promote bicycling and stuff. So that is September 19th.
Other announcements? All right, hearing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, we're done.